think ex ante, it's unclear whether one would predict firms getting bigger or smaller as a result of this modularity. And so, what are the implications of that for the size and shape of firms? Because on the one hand, it seems like a startup entrepreneur can build a company without a big team, right? Because they can just outsource everything. But on
Right.
the other hand, we see companies like Amazon that use this that have become absolutely ginormous companies, right? So one would, I think, ex ante, it's unclear whether one would predict firms getting bigger or smaller as a result of this modularity.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating point because, what I see, at least my observation is that we sort of see a polarization in terms of, very modular, very atomized single person, small shops coming up. And at the other end, we have players who are extremely large, not because they capture necessarily production capacity at scale, but because they capture market-wide governance capacity at scale and they provision market-wide infrastructure at scale. In between the two, we don't necessarily see a lot of players who are pure production players and are scaling up in the way they used to do in the industrial era. So that's been a certain level of polarization that's happened. We saw this with cloud computing, obviously, but with AI, this extends to a large part of the knowledge economy as well, because a lot of traditional knowledge work was tightly bundled to human labor and human capacity, which meant that you needed to invest in either acquiring expensive human labor or training them through expensive means. And now all of that is, or some forms of knowledge work can be performed without those commensurate investments, which then essentially means that it's possible to start companies without requiring that kind of headcount, that kind of investment anymore. At the same time, it's important to know that once these capabilities, the performance of certain forms of knowledge work, the ability to do a certain form of analysis or write a certain type of thesis, once these factors become commoditized as modular building blocks, you need to still be very clear on what basis you compete. You can't just compete by taking existing commoditized building blocks and then provisioning that to an end customer. You need to rebundle them into a solution. You need to rebundle them around a new control point, if we were to use that language. So there is a lot of potential for innovation, but you need to be very clear on what's your right to play on top of these modular building blocks.